thank you for joining me. It's that time of year where it's nice to be cosy, to get comfortable by a nice fire, by the Christmas tree, and get into a good book. But while I'm not reading the latest from WhatHoSnorkers, I like to look at computer games. And today, we're looking at a Christmas game. Because, after all, it is Christmas time. What is it? Excuse me.
Yo, blood! I've got a package for Professor Snorkers. Is that you?
No, sorry, he lives 5 doors away.
Which way do I go? Left or right?
Sorry about that. Where were we? Christmas time. There's no need to be afraid. At Christmas time, we do something else and banish shame. It's a game by Dan Isaaman. Long-time viewers of the channel will recognise Dan Isaaman from Computer Space Games and Computer Battle Games by Usborne way back in 2019 when I covered them, or he wrote them in 1983 when he was a sixth former. You are Santa Claus, and you have to deliver presents on Christmas Eve. But there's a problem. The presents only have names on them, and you're on Muddle Street and you need to deliver the presents very quickly before an evil curse strikes you down. Let's check it out. There is a version already on Spectrum Computing. It won't work though. The game hasn't quite been entered correctly. Line 90 is wrong. The book is correct. You need to insert a space. It's a very short game, but I've already typed it in. It took about 10 minutes to type in, if that. And it runs. You're on Muddle Street. You've got a bag of 10 presents. There are 10 houses. The labels just have the name, not the house number. You have to go to each house in turn and try to deliver the presents. Dawn is approaching though. You're running short of time. So, you must choose a house number. 1 to 10. The label says Wilson. Harold Wilson? Richard Wilson? Wilson the ball from that Tom Hanks film? No. The house belongs to Jones. Number 5 belongs to Jones. And they tell you not where Wilson lives, but how far away they are. Because on Muddle Street, people aren't very helpful. There are 10 names in the game, and you can see where you went to before, or you could just make notes. Mr. Isaaman makes some suggestions for improvement, which could be clearing the screen after each go, or adding more names to make things harder. Once you deliver a present, you can't go back to that house, it counts as a go. But each house has only 1 present, and you need to get all 10 before you turn into a reindeer. So there's a bit of tactics involved, because they are, at a certain point you know exactly where they are, and it gets easier as you go along. So house number 9 belongs to Grot, number 5 belongs to Mr. Clark, possibly Ken Clark with his hush puppy shoes. Now I've worked out what we're doing here, making notes. It's a little bit slow. I'll deliver them all in 17 goes. Well done. Hooray! That was rather fun. Now let's look at the Dragon 32 version, which as normal I have... One moment.
Noswaitha Celsig. Megan dwi.
Noswaitha Megan. Suddichi.
Dayan diog. IT Owen I hwn.
Nac oes.
Mae gen I ar anreg I Owen.
Men bwy dwi dwrs I ffydrith.
Alec ci fod i'n fwy penodol.
Drive dwi!
Draig fi o'n gwendid.
I'm over 200 miles away from Wales. As normal, I've done a Welsh translation as well. Enjoy. This is the Dragon 32 version, English of course, starting with. The game is called Christmas. It's available on tape. I learned it from tape. Takes a little while to load. So off we start again Where does Clark live? Does he live at number 5? No. Smith lives at number 5. Clark lives 3 doors away. Where does Jones live? Jones, a very Welsh name. So one of the thoughts was, why don't we have lots of people called Jones in the game? And I considered that for the Welsh version. What I did instead is something a bit more interesting. If you recall English language programs such as Ivor the Engine driver is called Jones the Steam. Also, soldiers in the army tend to be called Jones and then their personnel number because there are a lot of people called Jones. And there are reasons for this. But the Dragon 32 version, perfectly standard, nothing wrong with it at all. As is retro law, all programs for the Dragon 32 must be available in both English and Cymraeg. So we have here Nadolig, loaded from tape, run out as normal, and in Nadolig, and it asks you, Mer lebel in Doid Jon ad Peder, Rifedrus. I've changed all the names from the surnames you get in the English version into Welsh celebrities. And I've not just put their normal names. Oh no. Why are there so many people called Jones in Wales? Wales used to have a patronymic naming system where you were named after your father, either the son of, at so-and-so, or daughter of. And didn't just stop there, it went on to being multiple generations. Some people can trace their generations back 11 times. It was important to do this for land ownership, because you didn't own land directly, you own land based on your ancestors. Why is everyone called Jones then? In the Reformation, the number of names people used shrunk to standard Christian names such as John. So lots of people were then John, son of John, or John Jones. And here we have various celebrities such as Risiart at Risiart and Jon at Peder, or Catherine Ferk David, which is Catherine, daughter of David. I wanted to put Windsor Davies in, couldn't find his father's name, but here is the Welsh language version. In the early 80s, there were quite a lot of competing 8-bit computers, all of which ran on BASIC, and Dan Isaaman has done the normal thing here of providing translations for all of them. So now, with a word from... Oh, for heaven's sake!
This is the BBC.
What do you want? I pay my licence fee, you know.
We've received disturbing reports that you're not standing up during the national anthem.
That doesn't sound like me, you know. Are you sure you got the right house?
This is the home of Natalia and Svetlana's snorkers, I take it?
No, they're 9 doors away. You can tell by the red flag on the pole, and the red light in the window, and the Red Army choir blaring out.
I can trust you'll be watching the King's speech at Christmas?
I saw it at the cinema. Now, would you mind buggering off back to Ali Pally? I've got things to do. I should be having words with my friend Giles, who works at the BBC. Shocking. The BBC micro version. Not much to say about the BBC micro version, apart from I've provided it on disk, so you need to know the name of the file, which is Christum, or Christ M. That's a nice disk loading noise from the Beeb M emulator, and it's exactly the same. The label says O'Brien. No problems at all with typing it in. You've got 10 names, the names are all the same, enter your numbers, and try and do it as quick as you can. The game is a lot easier if you write down who you deliver to. The time limit is 20 moves. There are 10 houses, you have 20 moves in order to deliver everything. A simple game for a very expensive computer. Last but not least is Daft Blake's favourite computer. You're a bloody joke.
Evening, Squire. Arthur sent me.
Who?
Don't play dumb with me. I'm just here to pick up the Furkinators.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Furkinators. Nucleonic Furkinators. By positive implosion. Arthur bought them down the Winchester the other night. I'm here to collect.
I've got no Furkinators here. This is not that kind of house. WhatHoSnorkers doesn't play that kind of game.
Look, mate. Just let me speak to Vic, alright? There's no Vic here. He's 7 doors away. There better be a bonus for talking to that pillock.
No, Vic is not here. This is my house. The VIC-20. I don't know much about the VIC-20, apart from it's got a smaller screen, which you often noticed on the Usborne listings. Here's the Vic. You can tell it's the VIC-20 because it's got a nice big chunky text, which is very good for reading on YouTube. Less good for printing lots of information on the screen. One of the things that irritate me in basic games is when text splits at the end of a line, and this happens more often on the VIC-20 than on the ZX Spectrum. The ZX Spectrum I know exactly how many characters are on a line, 32. VIC-20 has bigger text, less on the screen, and sometimes you're not quite sure with string concatenation what happens. With the Dragon 32, having an input field automatically puts a question mark on for you. VIC-20 does put a space in, not really sure. So I've corrected this a few times. The game on the VIC-20 is called Christmas. You load it with just load, not with C load, that's a Dragon 32 thing. And again, we all seem to start with Clark, based on random numbers. House starts with Clark, and the person you want is four doors away. So that means Clark either lives at number 1 or number 9, Wilson, England, etc. And I always try to try and test these games, because at the end of the game, you want to make sure that the winning message or the losing message works and doesn't look rubbish. So at the end of the game, once you deliver 10 presents, I need to give a present to Wilson, who's at number 9. Where does Jones live? Jones is at number 4. England lives at number 5. And Edwards, the last one, is at number 10. Where's Grot live? Don't know. Come on. Number 8, O'Brien. I'm on the ball now. I'll deliver them all in 15 goes. Well done. And it all fits on the screen. Back again so soon? I wouldn't have left you without a snorkified version. Not at this time of year. So now, sit back and relax and see what madness I've produced to make Christmas time Snorkers time. So this is the snorkerized version. It's a lot bigger. So I've put a little loader program on the front and given it a loading screen. My first attempt at a loading screen was a fake loader at the start of the program, but that was far too long and caused loading issues. So I used the same code to generate the screen, save the screen as a screen string, and then just load it. First of all, I set the screen to be entirely black, so you can't see it loading until such time as I reveal the attributes. It just looks a little bit tidier. This is easy to do with ink 0, paper 0, and then just clear the screen. What you've got to watch out for is the bottom 2 rows. For that, you're going to basically print those directly as spaces. And here is Christmas time, but copyright Dan Isaaman 1983. This is just done with printing the words at the bottom of the screen and then use a little plot routine to copy the data above. Because we are loading more things. We are loading another screen's worth of data. We're loading 100 bytes of machine code. And then another little routine of machine code called Milky Way, which I've used before on Galactic Empire. So this is the game loaded. White ink, black paper, black border, and you have Milky Way. This has a collection of stars moving across the screen in one of 4 directions. The default is for the stars to move down the screen. But white stars moving down the screen look a lot like snowfall. It's a very simple effect, and it's done using interrupts, so you can still run your basic code. Beep causes it to hang a little bit, so you'll watch out for that. That will happen. You also can't clear the screen while it's active, but you can turn it off by calling USR 64003, and you turn it on with USR 64000 or 64,000. Milky Way was written by Neil Hopkinson and was published in Your Sinclair, issue number 32, August 1988, so 5 years after the publication of this original game. Dan suggests replacing the names with your own. So I've chosen to use characters from my video and then have that character actually answer the door, appearing in a little picture. This was the screen of data I loaded, which was individual portraits. So as normal, they don't tell you where they live, they tell you where they live close by. So Wasteland Warrior, no. Oh, we know where Wasteland Warrior lives. Each character has their own tune and a present appears. At the end of the game, you get a little game over screen and the tune, and then it starts again. If you win, Santa appears and it tells you how long you took. I was going to have something where there was an actual time limit as opposed to a go time limit, but I didn't quite implement that in the end.
Ba da ba 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 da ba 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 ba.
Let's look at the machine code. I didn't code directly in machine code as I'm not mad, and this would take a bit more than just a simple Elder. So I used a assembler I typed in from the ZX Spectrum Pocket Book. And you can load the source from tape of your assembler. You can enter it assembly directly, but then you can't save it and edit it later. But you can indeed load it from tape. And how do you do assembly using this assembler? Well, you create the assembly in rem statements, starting the assembly with a left bracket and ending it with a right bracket. You have things like org statements, which say start the memory here. And the first segment, I put A into the accumulator. I put 22528 into the BC register. I then store whatever's in the accumulator, which is 0, into the address at BC, which is the top left of the screen. I'm then doing an Elder. I'm copying from 22528 to 22529 for a length of 255. What this does, it sets the attribute of the top third of the screen to black ink, black paper, no bright, no flash. I then put another org statement in to move the memory onto 53030, and then I attempt to define some variables, but I get it wrong. What I'm actually doing here is declaring symbols. I want to store some values in memory, and rather than just remembering the memory, I'm going to use a symbol, pixel source, pix, and attributes. And I put these as equates, which just means they're symbols. What I really should have done is define them as def W's, which means define them as double words. But this will just about work. So here's the meat of our little machine code routine. At 53050, we do an Elder first. We're loading from pixel source, which is a screen we loaded from memory, into the top third of the screen for 2048 bytes. This is why we blank out the attributes, because I'm being done a very lazy Elder. Just the top third of the screen, 2048 bytes, no messing around. Spectrum screen layer is a bit hairy though, hence we now go into this bizarre loop. We stick 8 into register B, then enter loop, see the symbol loop. You can enter symbols into the assembler, which makes life a lot easier. We then stick the BC registers onto the stack, because we're going to need the BC registers for our own purposes. We load DE, the destination registers, from the memory location held within attribute. HL is the source. We load that from the attribute source variable. And 6 into the BC register. That's a length. We then copy 6 bytes. That's 6 attribute bytes. We then put 32 into the BC register. We then load HL with whatever's in attribute source. Add BC to HL, which adds 32 to that value, and then store it back again in the variable. We then do the same trick, load attributes and BC, add 32 to it and put it back. We restore BC from the stack, so it's now 8. We then subtract 1 from it. If it's not 0, we then go back to loop. And if it is 0, we return. This basically puts 6 bytes from memory on screen, then jumps forward 32 and does it again 8 times. We're going to put attributes on the screen for a 6-column, 8-row picture. If the assembly language assembles successfully, you'll get told what the symbols are and what any variables you have, where they are located, and you then get to save the machine code to tape. Hopefully you made a note of how long it is, because it doesn't tell you. But very simple to do a save of Elder code to tape. This is Elder 11. The code we're finally using is Elder 15. I made some more changes. But the advantage of having the code in REM statements is you can actually edit it as you go along without having to edit it directly in memory. Hope you enjoyed all those. As normal, they'll be available on Jim Blimey's website. And I'll leave you with my Christmas extravaganza.
With a sincere wish that we all find some Christmas magic.
Ho, 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 ho. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, 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 ho, ho. Ho, 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 ho. Ho, ho, ho. Ho, 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 ho.
Right.